Well, it's only 2018, but now that the midterms are out of the way, US political focus has clearly shifted towards the next big race, the 2020 presidential election. Donald Trump has been very clear that he'll be running for office again. In fact, he's already trademarked his 2020 election slogan, "Keep America Great." But who will be the Democratic Party's answer to Trump's re-election bid? Who will attempt to go where Hillary Clinton could not in 2016? The media is abuzz with speculation about potential candidates, and over the coming weeks here at Youth Matters, we're going to have a look at some of the likely contenders to take on the president in our new series, Watching Washington. In this episode, we are going to look at one of the most talked about contenders, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. 69-year-old Warren has an esteemed academic background, making her mark as a Harvard law professor. Before entering politics, she became renowned for her tough stance on corporate misconduct as the chair of the Congressional Oversight Panel, and later as a special advisor to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, a government agency she is widely credited with being the architect of. This background set her up for an entry to politics in 2012 when she ran for the US Senate. After comfortably winning the Democratic primary unopposed, she went on to defeat incumbent Republican Scott Brown by winning over 53% of the statewide vote in the general election, becoming the first woman to serve as a United States Senator for Massachusetts. And her election to the Senate gained her recognition not just for the glass ceiling she shattered, but also for what some on the right described as her relentlessly liberal agenda. In fact, as early as 2011, a video of her response to a question about taxing the wealthy went viral.
I hear all this, well, this is class warfare, this is whatever. No, there is nobody in this country who got rich on his own. Nobody. You built a factory out there, good for you, but I want to be clear, you moved your goods to market on the roads the rest of us paid for. Yep. You hired workers, the rest of us paid to educate. You were safe in your factory because of police forces and fire forces that the rest of us paid for. You didn't have to worry that marauding bands would come and seize everything at your factory and hire someone to protect against this because of the work the rest of us did. Now look, you built a factory and it turned into something terrific or a great idea. God bless. Keep a big hunk of it. But part of the underlying social contract is you take a hunk of that and pay forward for the next kid who comes along.
It didn't take long into her Senate career for her public reputation to build further, becoming a member of the Senate Committee on Banking, Housing and Urban Affairs. Less than 2 months into her tenure, she questioned federal bank regulators over their lack of prosecution of major financial institutions that had committed acts of wrongdoing during the global financial crisis, remarking, "Too big to fail has become too big for trial," in a video that amassed over 1 million views within a few short days. Just a month later, on the same committee, she was applauded by many on the left for her comments during a hearing into money laundering by big banks.
Now, in December, HSBC admitted to money laundering, to laundering $881 million that we know of for Mexican and Colombian drug cartels, and also admitted to violating our sanctions for Iran, Libya, Cuba, Burma, the Sudan. And they didn't do it just one time. It wasn't like a mistake. They did it over and over and over again across a period of years. And they were caught doing it, warned not to do it, and kept right on doing it, and evidently making profits doing it. Now, HSBC paid a fine, but no one individual went to trial. No individual was banned from banking. And there was no hearing to consider shutting down HSBC's activities here in the United States. I'll just say here, if you're caught with an ounce of cocaine, the chances are good you're going to go to jail. If it happens repeatedly, you may go to jail for the rest of your life. But evidently, if you launder nearly $1 billion for drug cartels and violate our international sanctions, your company pays a fine and you go home and sleep in your own bed at night. Every single individual associated with this. And I think that's fundamentally wrong.
Her position as one of the Democratic Party's top communicators and fundraisers in her first years in the Senate fueled speculation that she may run for president in 2016. Ultimately, she stayed out of the race and remained mostly neutral throughout the Democratic primaries, eventually endorsing Hillary Clinton once she had become the presumptive nominee. Many progressive Democrats agitated to make Elizabeth Warren Clinton's vice presidential candidate, but even though she was allegedly being vetted for the position, Hillary Clinton instead chose Virginia Senator Tim Kaine for the role. Despite being passed over for running mate, Warren was an avid and impassioned campaigner for Clinton during the race, particularly throughout America's Northeast, where she is most popular. During the campaign, she described future President Trump as a dishonest loser who didn't care about people. In the aftermath of Clinton's shock election defeat, Elizabeth Warren has become one of the most public and influential faces of the Democratic Party, regularly appearing at rallies and in the media. She's also considered by some to be a feminist icon, particularly in the wake of a Senate debate regarding the appointment of Jeff Sessions as Attorney General. During the debate, the Republican-controlled Senate voted to silence Warren as she attempted to read out a letter by civil rights activist Coretta Scott King. Many in politics perceived that a double standard had developed in the Senate's implementation of this ruling, as later in the debate, Senator Warren's male colleague Jeff Merkley read out the same letter without objection. In response to this situation, Republican Majority Leader Senator Mitch McConnell had the following to say.
She was warned. She was given an explanation. Nevertheless, she persisted.
The phrase, "nevertheless she persisted," was quickly adopted widely by feminist activists throughout the US and became a de facto slogan for Warren herself. The phrase didn't stop at Elizabeth Warren, though. It started to be used as a hashtag to reference a whole array of women throughout history that were perceived to have battled on through hard times. People like Rosa Parks and Malala Yousafzai were among those the phrase became associated with. However, some commentators criticized the comparison of Senator Warren to women who had objectively persisted through far more trying circumstances. Despite this, the media response to the movement was largely positive, and it served an important role in elevating her national image. This year, speculation became rife that she was readying herself for a 2020 presidential run. Despite repeatedly brushing off suggestions that this was the case, she began to change tune a few months ago when she started using less negative language about the prospect of a run. Then, in September, she told a crowd of supporters in her home state that she would seriously look into running for president after the November midterm elections. She went on to be re-elected to the Senate by a significantly increased margin, defeating Republican candidate Jeff Deal by 24 points. Such a significant showing convinced many that Warren had the electoral prowess needed to bring the White House back into Democratic hands. But not everyone is so convinced. Many detractors point out some of the significant roadblocks ahead if she does decide to pursue a presidential run. The most well-reported of them being a recent scandal surrounding her Native American ancestry. Before moving to Massachusetts as an adult, Warren grew up in Oklahoma, where as a young girl, she was told stories by her family about Native American ancestry they had. While working at Harvard in the 1990s, Warren's ancestry was touted by the university as a symbol of its academic diversity, and for many years Harvard claimed to have a Native American law professor teaching there. Warren claims she did not consent to this, however, and did not use her ancestry to get ahead in her career. What complicates the matter for Senator Warren, however, is that for almost a decade, she identified herself as a minority in a national law school's directory. She claims this was in the hope of finding other people with similar backgrounds, but opponents claim it was a calculated move to further the impression of herself as being of minority status. The situation is one often brought up by President Trump to ridicule Warren, with him regularly referring to her as Pocahontas, something that she alleges is a racial slur. In an effort to further embarrass her, Trump promised to donate $1 million to charity if she could prove her Native ancestry. In October, she released the results of a DNA test, which claimed there was strong evidence to suggest she had a direct Native American ancestor between 4 and 6 generations ago. Upon the release, Trump decried the testing as being phony, and said he would only donate the $1 million if he could do the testing personally, a comment which Elizabeth Warren described as creepy. But it's not just Republicans that were upset at Warren's DNA release. The Cherokee Nation, the group present in Oklahoma, were also offended by the senator's actions. Chuck Hoskin Jr., the Cherokee Secretary of State, described the test as irrelevant.
The problem with the DNA test is that it proves nothing of relevance to whether a person is a citizen of an Indian nation, a member of an Indian nation. DNA at best can give you some indicators of some markers that indicate that you're related to somebody who lived long ago that may have lived in North and South America, may have been a native peoples of those continents. It's irrelevant to what it means to be a Native American in this country. That's based on a legal definition. Certainly every tribe has that in common, that we have some legal basis for our citizenship that we determine consistent with federal treaties. Just wholly unhelpful for any national leader to cling to DNA to determine or to establish that they're Native American in this country.
Other roadblocks that lie in her way include fears that major Wall Street financial institutions would raise significant funds to back her opponents. Others fear her low approval rating amongst white men and see this as being damaging to her chances of winning back critical swing states in the Midwest, often seen as being crucial to any 2020 candidate seeking to beat Trump. But some remain more optimistic that her firebrand, populist, progressive persona would allow her to ride a blue wave into the White House. Only time will tell if this liberal law professor can go on to become the first American referred to as Madam President. This is Cal Slater reporting for Youth Matters.